everyone, and thank you very much for coming to this event. It's going to be really good, of course, and all the more so because you have taken the time to come here despite the blazing hot summer weather outside. What's the matter with you? Obviously, there's something about AI and agentic AI that is an attraction. Maybe it's a magnetic AI we're going to be doing today. But in general terms, what we have this evening for you is another event of the BCS London branches. We have already had one AI event recently, which was AI and privacy. And I hope you saw that or you can catch up with it. Tonight is especially important because it's a chargeable event. And you've all came and joined in with the principle of it. We feel to stop the horrendous rise of the no-shows. We've been having 60% no-shows. And I'm afraid I don't accept that that's how it is. And, you know, I've got 5 things I can do tonight. Which one should I go to, etc. I'm trying to build back, if you will, the professionalism which says that if people say they'll go to something, maybe they can't come, but then they tell us, and I know that you believe them. Well, we have a great crowd of people here, and also we have a great crowd of people online. So thank you very much for joining us wherever you are. But we also have some wonderful people I want to introduce you to. In fact, what I'll do is I'll do this in 2 stages. I'll first of all tell you who I am, because I was just cleaning the floor and somebody said, come over here and talk. My name is Darlin, and I'm the chairman of 3 supergroups in BCS, the Chartered Institute for IT. The 3 groups are London North, London South, and London Central branches. And they are, in fact, super groups of people, knowledgeable IT professionals and more, keen to learn about the many subjects that are happening in our world today. And boy, isn't that a difficult job. So what we are trying to do is to give events on some of these topics, whether it's AI or cybersecurity, or it's robotics, or it's quantum, or whatever it is. A lot of things to do with data, of course, and a lot of things to do with other human aspects of our computer environments. This one, of course, focuses on AI. And what I will ask you to do is just prepare some questions. Why are you here? If you know some specific things to ask our knowledgeable speakers, please prepare them, because the size and nature of our audience makes it perfectly possible to cover those aspects, hopefully, during the time we've got, which is from now, roughly 6:30, until about 8:30 if necessary, but much more likely till 8 o'clock. And then we here at BCS will go and have some food and drink. So that's the plan. If you hear any interruptions, like bells ringing, nothing's scheduled today. So my usual line, tap yourself on the head first of all, make sure it's not coming from in there. Next, if you're familiar with the person next to you, tap them on the head as well, make sure it's not coming from there. And then run. Don't run. Just walk calmly towards the exit. There's one fire exit that way, the way you enter the building. And there's another one to the left and at the back of that room. And they will both lead you out into the street where you should be past the reach of those ringing bells and in a haven of peace and quiet again. But we don't want any of that right here. We want to have an active, engaged, relatively noisy session with you and our Salesforce presenter. Now, what is it about AI that attracts Salesforce people? I'll ask my friend and colleague, Jude Umeh, who is the Director of AI Strategy at Salesforce. Jude.
Thank you, Dalim, and good evening, everyone. It's so good to see you all, and I appreciate your spending time with us this evening. We're going to have a session, which I hope you'll make interactive. Bring the questions, let's have a conversation. I think AI is far too young for anyone to tell you what's going to happen. So we're all on a journey together to discover where this is going. So with that, I'd like to introduce myself and my two colleagues who will be speaking with me tonight. If you want to come up front, I'll start with me and then hand over to them and we'll kick this off. So my name is Jude Umeh. I am a strategy director in Salesforce AI Global Practice. I've been with Salesforce for 9 years. I work with customers to help make them successful in the use of AI. Responsible AI and the implementation of it. So it's actual hands-on work. And alongside my colleagues, I'll let them introduce themselves. Over to you, Sally.
Thank you, Jude. Hi, everyone. I'm Nowroozi-Gardner. It's my first time here at BCS. Really flattered to be here. It's a fantastic organisation. I'm really delighted to share the stage with you guys and share some learnings that we've had along our way. I'm a senior manager in our responsible AI strategy team as well, alongside Jude.
And Gautam.
Hello, everyone. I'm Gautam Sharma. I work within the same practice as Jude and Sally, but I look after the pre-sales for AI professional services business for UKI. First time again at BCS. Thank you for inviting us. It seems to be a lovely audience. And yes, excited to kind of talk about everything that we know of so far. As Jude said, anyway, we are kind of all in together, probably half a step ahead, maybe at some point, or half a step behind. But then excited to kind of learn from you and also share whatever we know.
Okay, so with that, we're going to kick right off. We've got some slides, but like I said, let's make it interactive. We have a lot of slides, so if you don't ask questions, we'll keep going with the slides. So I'm going to hand over to Sally, who's going to kick us off and introduce the topics and also try and level set with what AI is. Then Gautam and I will go through what we're learning, what we're seeing, how we approach it, how do you get started? And then we'll do another thing about responsible AI, and then I'll end up with here's a real implementation, and here's the journey we took to get it out. So there's a lot of content. I'd like it to be directed and guided by you. So if you have questions, things you're really interested in, please bring it up. It's a conversation, not a speech. So with that, Sally, are you ready to take over? Yes.
Yeah, that's us. So as Jude said, what we'll do first is just do a little bit of level setting. I think you're all here because of maybe the title of the session, the rise of agentic AI. So we just want to do some level setting. I think in the world of AI, there's a lot of new vocabulary that's introduced. It's quite overwhelming to keep up with all the new terms. And I think we all have a responsibility to be kind and be helpful to each other, to share how we define things, because we're on this journey together. So what I'd love to do is just set us, get a level set from you as well in terms of your understanding of where you're at. You know, I think we all remember, and it feels weird saying 2023 because it felt like yesterday, but it also felt like such a long time ago with the evolution we've been on. But, you know, that's where we really saw this wave of predictive AI and generative AI. And now we are firmly in this next wave already with agentic AI. And then this is what really today's kind of conversation is about as well. With predictive AI, you know, we're all users and consumers of it, from unlocking our phone with iPhones with our faces, checking the weather and things like that. And then, you know, in 2023, we started really seeing that emergence of Copilot. ChatGPT got launched, and we're all immersing ourselves in co-pilots and using that. Where we're at right now is very exciting, but of course it's something we've never navigated before, and I think it's important we all share and learn from each other as well, because guess what? Those new waves will probably come sooner rather than later. What I really want to do is ground us in what is an agent anyway? We hear this term a lot. How familiar or comfortable are you with the word agent? And this is a safe space. We can be vulnerable with what we understand of agents. Who would say they're comfortable articulating what an agent is in this next wave of AI? Love it, yeah. And
Somebody.
yeah, go for it.
Start and a certain process is one upgrade compared to what we see with generative AI, because in generative AI, with your prompting and by structured prompting, you get at the end the best result. It sometimes is from the first time, but very often it needs some substep, where agent is you give them the task and they take time to think about certain minutes, depending on the complexity of the task. And they show a way of thinking and then they execute.
Right. Yeah. And this is not a test, by the way, at all. But I think it's important that we all share our definitions of it, but beyond kind of jargon of what it is. This is my definition that I'm happy to share, and I'll probably add to it as we go and have more conversations. So I know there's a natural discomfort when we're thinking about agents that might do things autonomously, because it might make us feel uncomfortable with the future of work and our role in organizations as well. The way I like to look at it is as an assistant to you. You know, you are the human at the helm of what you do, but you have an assistant or you have an intern. And this intern or this assistant, good evening, has access to all your customer information, to all your business information. And it's really essentially offload to one another in the right way. And I've even put a little job description together for this agent, because this is about this agent speaking in your brand tone of voice. It's someone that can operate 24/7, because guess what? We need to attend to our families and our social lives, and that's okay. They can work when we sleep. There's someone that can appear on any interface. So we might see them in like a live chat, a user face, but actually they can appear in WhatsApp or SMS or different channels or on your website as well. There are people, they are agents that escalate to humans when we need to. So yes, they can act autonomously and take action, but they can do it and escalate to the human based on the particular use case as well. See as an intern as well, you wouldn't just onboard an intern and leave them. We can give them more manuals, give them more information, and you'll put them on a performance plan to kind of get there. So see it as a iterative thing as well, and ultimately just get smarter with every single interaction. So I hope that demystifies agent a little bit. Yes?
Just want to share that there's already a new term that would replace digital assistant. Okay? It's a bit loaded, but it is digital employee.
Yes. Yeah,
Be scared, be very scared.
digital labor and things like that. So yeah, of course. Yes.
When does the agent know when to involve humans or to invoke human interaction, or how does that kind of happen?
That's a very good question. That effectively comes in the way you configure that agent. Yes, it's out of the box agents,
Right.
but the way you set that agent up to know the right guardrails that you can know when you're supposed to hand over to a human, that's where the role of the design is really important. So you configure that design.
That with the Python design.
Absolutely.
Agent is also a legal term. So I don't know if it's within the brief of this talk, but a very interesting question raised by Agentic AI is the extent to which the principal, which would be the individual that is directing the digital assistant, is legally responsible for the acts of the digital assistant, acting autonomously or otherwise. So when you talk about agency, you're talking about a legal concept as well as a practical one.
That's a good question. And it's a topic I we'll get to as we go.
We will talk about it.
I love that topic. It's
Yeah,
something-
me too.
I just want to share a quick example before I pass over here of the difference. A lot of people are naturally making the distinction between maybe a live chatbot and an agent and what that difference is. So I want to share a personal story. It's really good timing actually, because when this happened, it was a pain, but I was actually really happy because I knew I could bring it to this presentation today. So it's very hot in London, as you know. My husband orders a lawnmower. Okay, he orders a lawnmower. We get a delivery, and a drill is delivered to us. And I know you're in your manly era right now, but why do we have a new drill? And it shouldn't be a drill, it should be a lawnmower. And as you know, when I introduced myself, I introduced my name as Sally. But we had a delivery of a drill by the name of Izzy Newman. So it's the wrong item has been delivered. And I have very long grass in my garden right now. So my husband goes to the chatbot on the website of the retailer, which I shall not disclose. And he raised that with the live chat. And then they were really attentive, but the live chat said, I've escalated this with you and someone will get in touch with you tomorrow. Perfectly okay response. If this was an agentic experience, they could already take that action for you and maybe get you another one dispatched and that order done. And that's a really simple way of how we can really leverage this technology in a really positive way that's going to make the lives of the job of someone easier, but also improve customer experience because things happen, things go wrong as well. So I just want to kind of level set with that example and show you the difference between maybe live chatbots that are scripted and agents that can take action and operate on many different channels as well. I'll pass over to Gautam now.
Thank you. Thank you, Sally. Just before this, just want to put forward a forward-looking statement. That was an initial slide that we had there. Salesforce is a publicly traded company, and you have to make any buying decisions based on what's currently available in the market. So that's recorded now.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Sally, for this. Where we are today, right? It's an interesting journey. And to your point earlier, when you said agent has to be funded by legal conditions as well. Humans who use agent will have to play a role of an HR. Have to look after your. There will be a body which will look after agents at a certain point, right? This one. And we might have an agent to fix these things at some point. While we get that sorted, you all are aware of predictive, generative, assisted, and autonomous journey of AI. I think that's high level, which is where we started with making predictions based on the historical data. That's predictive AI, which is where you say, I have the data of the last 3 months or 6 months or a year of my sales. Can you now predict the upcoming year's sales, basically forecast the upcoming year's numbers? Then came generative, wherein can you rewrite this email? Can you write this email? Can you make any changes on this email or just basically writing English for you, right? And then came assistive, wherein we talked about co-pilots, right? And Sally touched upon it, where we use ChatGPT to do a lot of tasks that are essentially required, basically. And you're talking to an AI agent of your own and then asking them to do something on your behalf. And then autonomous, which Sally touched upon, which is you're giving an authority to someone as an intern, as your own employee, kind of take actions on your behalf. That's kind of a journey that we want to get into today. We at Salesforce have been engaged, particularly our practice have been engaged in everything Gen AI and autonomous agent capabilities for a time. These being there in the market give us an opportunity and exposure to manage it firsthand, which is where we kind of dig deeper into understanding how exactly it works for different industries, for different customers, to solve different type of problems, to augment different human capabilities that are available currently in the market, which is our intention here today to talk about, right? Where we are, this is basically a journey that we followed at Salesforce. And you see, we started in 1999 and 25 years of innovation, I would say this, right? This is basically, a lot of it is organic innovation and a lot of it is acquisition. But when Salesforce started, it was just so Mr. Benioff, Mark Benioff, the founder and CEO of Salesforce, they realized that we want to solve a problem of the sales workforce primarily. And that's where we launched Sales Cloud. And we said, we don't need a CD to compact this to work and install a software. Why don't we work over web? And that was time when web was obviously 1999, 2000, .com bubble, web was taking shape. And we took an opportunity to kind of launch Sales Cloud. And since then, these entire acquisitions or innovation that we've done is basically to personalize our experience for our customers. Started with sales, we realized service is a sales channel as well. So we launched Service Cloud, is where we cater to everything in customer service space. We realized that sales starts way before, wherein from the marketing side itself, right? To source the right leads, to run the campaigns, to promote our product or services. We acquired a company called ExactTarget, launched Marketing Cloud. We realized that to grow big, like Apple or Google, we need to have our own marketplace to democratize the way the enterprise applications work. And that's where we launched App Exchange. By the way, this was an idea given to Mr. Benioff by Steve Jobs. He was like, if you want to grow big, democratize the way that you operate. We launched App Exchange, wherein ecosystem can come and develop their own applications to run on Salesforce, which helps Salesforce kind of scale their horizon. And that actually spinned up the industry clouds for us. And then the innovation kept on going since we launched Einstein in 2016. That was our first AI touch point, largely publicly as a touch point, wherein we launched Einstein as a predictive AI engine for our customers' broader use. And then it kept on going with MuleSoft being API-driven, Demandware being Commerce Cloud, Tableau being, and I think of us have heard. What Salesforce tried to do was basically to stay relevant in the market and to stay relevant for their customers. We realized that everything that's happening around the back end, which is CRM space, we also need a front end where we can read the data that goes into a CRM. So we kind of acquired Tableau, recently Slack, and now Agentforce. Agentforce is basically the first agentic ecosystem that we've launched in Salesforce. And that's an autonomous agent that we'll talk about in successive slides. We talked about chatbots, copilots, autonomous agents. This is basically, chatbots is like hard-coded Q&As. You kind of give your agent or a bot certain questions and certain answers, as we saw in Sally's example, right? It was kind of a chatbot, which is not authorized to take an action on your behalf, but authorized to respond on your behalf based on the hard-coded English that is given to them. Copilots are basically assistive AI that I spoke about, generative assistive and autonomous, which is where they are smart, they can generate content on your behalf, but you need to give a prompt, you need to actually ask for questions like ChatGPT, right? And it could be conversational, and you can get really good results with assistive agents like copilots. They don't act on your behalf. As you were kindly saying that you can leave an agent with certain actions and it'll work on your behalf. Everybody's familiar with Iron Man's Jarvis? Yeah, that's kind of an autonomous agent. So when you say that Jarvis, get me this, get me that, Jarvis is acting on your behalf, right? So that's what an autonomous agent is all about. Start off towards the end of last year, when we launched Agentforce, our CEO had a vision of putting 1,000 agents live before 31st of January. And that's where our practice together. And we tried to build agents for our customers, not in months, but in weeks, in certain shape and form, in days as well, right? So it was a big, ambitious goal set for us as an ecosystem. And I think everybody came together, all hands on the deck, and we tried to deliver those 1,000 agents live. Not just Salesforce professional services, but we had a huge partner community from the likes of our GSIs like Accenture, Deloitte, PwCs of the world. Everybody came together to put this agentic ecosystem live. And we kind of succeeded in a greater capacity there. But why is it different? And what is the lessons learned for us from there, right? So when we went to our customers to talk about agentic AI, most of the customers were still in the mindset of bot. They were like, can you build a live agent for us, which is conversational? But then they were not very clear on what exactly they need that agent to do. That's where the thin line between a chatbot live agent and an agent force or an autonomous agent kind of brings in. And that's where I think it's essentially important for us to differentiate between a bot and an agent, right? Agent is conversational and it also understands human sentiments, the tone of language, the next best action that they should take. Whereas bots are just mechanical, right? And you've just seen it in the example as well.
So where are these agents developed? Who's doing the back end developing of these agents?
Us, humans.
Who's us? Yes, well, who's us? Because there's cultural differences here.
Absolutely.
And what may be, here, acceptable here will not be acceptable on the other side. So who's doing the coding?
Absolutely.
Who are the software engine, the software architects? Where are they based?
You touched upon a really good point, which I think you also talked about. What would an agent do in German, right? So if it's a German customer, how would an agent deal with it?
Yeah, because agents are sensors. They're sensors on a network. That's what agents really are. You're getting into the engineering. So agents are sensors on networks. So they're sensing the environment. They're sensing a network 24/7. So who's doing the software architecture? Who's building it?
Yeah, agents, I would say, are not softwares, they're applications, right, within the software.
Yeah, the software applications.
They're like 5 attributes of an agent.
That's what they are. So who's doing that development? Because Salesforce is an American company. Who's doing the development?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll touch upon it. But before that, I just want to address one point. Salesforce has got 5 attributes, right? Very essential to understand that, to answer your question. First is role. The role that we want that agent to play. Right? For example, if you're a contact center agent, call center guy, and if you want an agent to manage a contact center operation, that's their role. The second is what's their brain. So basically the knowledge that the agent uses. If you're a contact center guy, you'll be given a manual to answer or respond to customer queries. That agent, that is the brain of a human agent. That should be the brain of
But
the
it's not a human
AI agent as well.
Okay, go on.
Exactly. That should be the brain of the AI agent as well, right? So some knowledge source primarily. The third is basically the action that the agent is supposed to take, because it's autonomous, right? So for example, if I'm just taking an example of customer service representative here again. A customer service representative is supposed to act on behalf of that contact center to respond back to the customer's questions which comes into their way, right? Probably raise the case at some point, escalate to supervisors at some point, close the case at some point, those kind of things. Those are actions. Those actions can be taken by an autonomous agent. That's third attribute of taking an action. This is the knowledge that they have. Fourth is guardrails, right? And the guardrails are basically what human agents are not supposed to do. For example, few of the human agents are not supposed to issue a refund for the customers, right? To issue a refund, they probably have to go to their supervisors. Similarly, an AI agent has to hand off the conversation to a human agent when it comes to refunding something. These are the guardrails, just taking an example. And lastly is the channel. Where do you want that agent to work? Is it web, WhatsApp, message, website, maybe, those kind of things, or just a telephonic agent. So if you understand these 5 things, anyone who's implementing that agent, and to your question on who is the engineer behind implementing the agents, is specific to the organization that's implementing that agent. For example, Agentforce is Salesforce's agent, and we at Salesforce have got our own Agentforce engineer or Agentforce architects to develop and deliver this, and deliver the agent in the right knowledge, guardrails, action, and channel capacity that I spoke about.
So are they based here? Are they based in the United States?
It's everywhere.
Doesn't matter, yeah.
Yeah, but this is Europe and GDPR comes into this.
Every software company is doing this. Every software company.
Yeah, I know. I've been in the software business for 40 years, developing and doing X, Y, and Z. So I know it intimately. So GDPR is layered on top of this.
100%.
So where are these people based?
GDPR, there's AI, EU AI Act
Yeah, I know.
has come out. All of these are fundamentally a part of the guardrails that we put together for those agents. Now the agent operating in the EU region knows that they need to follow the EU AI Act before responding back to the customer with the tone of voice. And that is a configuration that's done behind the scenes by the engineer. Doesn't matter who's sitting where, doesn't matter the geography of the agent.
Oh, yes, it does. I mean, I don't want to be argumentative, but yes, it
Loading
does.
files, isn't it?
We're in a different world here, and when you start talking about autonomous agents in AI doing things, you're going into a whole different ecosystem.
Right.
So where people are based does matter because cultural things come into it. You know, you're talking
That's where
about,
agent becomes
you're talking
intelligent,
about
right?
human rights, you're talking about a lot of other things. So how are all these things catered for? You're mentioning the big consulting firms.
Yeah.
But what about the small to medium enterprises or the mom and pop store who want to use AI? Can they use this? Can they integrate this into their pipelines?
Anyone can use this. Anyone can use this for their business as well. And the reason I take name of those global SI partners is because they have a global presence, right? So if an Accenture is implementing an agent force of Salesforce for mom and pop shop, they'll make sure that despite of the fact that engineers sitting in America, they are catering to every single customer in every single region in that capacity. And that's where the intelligent angle of an agent comes into play. Because these are intelligent agents, right? If you're logging in from the EU, agent would know that you're logging in from EU, and then they'll factor in all the GDPR regulations, EU AI Act, and be mindful of the fact that they need to respond to the customer according to those norms. Yes, please.
Thanks. Maybe it's slightly linked to
Yes.
the same question. In terms of when an agent makes a decision, how important is the explainability aspects in terms of how it made that decision and why it made these choices, and how mature is that area so far?
It is quite important, and that's why you probably would have seen the reasoning, the reasoning section coming up on ChatGPT and others, and Perplexity and all of those platforms as well, right? So what's happening is there's one way of us getting a response back from an assistive or an autonomous agent, and the second way of us understanding the brain of that agent and how exactly they have come to that conclusion. So if you don't like the way that they think, primarily in the assistive, you have that liberty, and you can go back and tweak your prompt in saying that I don't like that way. Can you add this particular factor? And then you will get a better response or another type of response rather, right? So it is essentially important.
Yeah, I totally. I think the two questions are linked, absolutely. So yours was who's doing the engineering and where are they based, and are they taking into account the sensitivities of that region or the people or the customers they're serving? That's critical to the success of an agent. It's got to be better in some ways because it has certain attributes, like it works 24/7, it'll, do what it's supposed to do, but it's highly constrained. And I say that because we've seen agents come and generative AI makes mistakes, and there's LLMs in agents. So you don't just turn on the tap and walk away. Sally said it's got to be interns first. You train it and you sensitize it to the audience it's addressing. So to your point, actually, it doesn't matter where the engineer sits. It's who trains the agent, who gives it its rules, who puts the guardrails in place and tunes it to the sensitivity of the customer interacting with the agent.
Keeps managing it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So all those things we've done, and I'll tell you a story at the end of how we've implemented it for a customer end to end, and hopefully we'll dig a little deeper into that. Your question, sorry, there's a question in play. To your question, explainability. That's a big one. It's a vexed question. Look, let's be blunt. You have models put inside these agents. Those models, how do you know where it gets its information from? They tell you it's been trained somewhere else and it has emergent outcomes that were not in the training data. How did it come up with that? I'm not sure anybody can answer it today. So I'll be very blunt with you. So explainability is a big deal for enterprise. So what Salesforce does is it provides a platform. And in that platform, you have something called Data Cloud, which literally tracks every interaction your agent has. And you can do the monitoring Sally mentioned and go deep and see how did the conversation go, who asked what, when, and then you use it to form your dashboards and reports. That's one of the ways you can look at the explainability, the levels to it. You can show the evidence, But to explain it, you've got to go into data science territory sometimes.
Makes sense. And just one last point. The examples so far have been about customer journey or customer service. Are there more sensitive use cases where the explainability part might come into play even stronger?
Oh, yeah. It depends on the industry. So if you work with Ministry of Defense, their requirements are this high. If you work with lawyers, you said something earlier about when you have agency, the definition of agency is in the law. So what does it mean? Humans or agents, still the same thing in the law. What does it mean? That's a huge, I'll really get into that with you when I talk about it, because for the people in intellectual property, that's number one. You cannot own copyright except you're a person, a living human being. And yet this AI things are developing artwork, they're writing books, they're creating films. Who owns the rights to those things? So there's a whole legal conversation to be had in that area. And I did a presentation, I think a year or two back, where we started looking very early forays into this. It's developing, but it's very slow. So a lot of questions are still, as I said at the start, we're all learning, and let's exchange ideas. Let's hear from each other, and then let's expand our knowledge together.
Challenging question.
I do have a question, but sorry. I think you might cover this, so if you do, then just stop me. But I'm interested to know, your agents, are they based around an LLM, and then you are training that with specific prompts and guardrails? Am I going in the right direction?
We don't train LLMs.
Yeah.
So the LLMs are provided by LLM providers. Salesforce has its own LLMs, which of course will train. But the platform, and it's important for that distinction, the platform uses LLMs to enable agents to deliver work, right? So the training of the LLMs is for the LLM providers, whoever brings OpenAI, Gemini, who.
So you go into like Hugging Face and finding appropriate.
We don't go into Hugging Face. We have agreements with LLM providers, right? Their LLMs can be used in the Salesforce platform. So when you have an agent, when you're creating an agent, you can actually choose which LLM you want to use to support that agent.
So I'm really interested in that bit. Do you say this is going to be a sales processing task, and so we have very specific LLMs for that, or how does that process?
We can talk about it. Yeah, we'll cover that later on, but there's a level of detail you want to go into. Then I'll have to bring more people, and then we can talk data science. I'm not sure if everyone here wants to do it, but let's get into that as at the time.
Question. Link to that. Sorry. So when you cover that, can you also cover like how that differs from like the IBM Watson, like 3 years ago before LLM? Because we were doing the same thing. We had the big database. We are running it through the processing, spitting out the answers. So how that differs from this thing, if you can talk about that later as well.
Later, but I'll start. Watson did what it did in the phase of AI we're calling predictive, right? Generative AI is not what Watson was using at the time. I don't know what they're using now. But so there's that fundamental difference between the models that power these applications. That will be your starting point for the difference. Sorry, there are a couple of questions. This lady and that lady. Sorry, yeah.
I have a couple of questions now as the time passed. The first one is about the guardrails, and if you have any plans to elaborate more on that, and how you ensure compliance, because that's from a technical perspective is
there's an entire section Sally's going to cover.
He's going to talk about just that topic.
Perfect.
Because AI can't be, spoken about without putting the right guardrails there.
Yeah, how the guardrails are being implemented and how you ensure it's compliant to the regulation. That is the main element. I think that I'll leave it to that, and I'll answer the other one later. I'll ask.
You're waiting very patiently for a long time. Please.
My question was around what you mentioned, that the guidance that human is used in the sale will be given to agents to implement. But this guidance is as one place. So you explained the trained further. This is question how they will be trained, because I have come across also companies who have employed agents, but not actually to train them to solve the thing, but just to hide themselves while they are not solving the thing, to avoid legal responsibility and so on. So it's a bit tricky situation how, because in the same time, agents could be really nicely developed, but it ways to implement the certain things that are there, and for maybe just 24 hours, 7 users. But in the same time, it can allow some companies to avoid the responsibility and hide themselves, and especially if it is big player. Today we have one such big player who's doing something.
Well, absolutely. And I'll try to touch upon how it is different than traditional software projects that we've been working on. And that's where the essential element of putting the guardrails and testing them comes into play. So what we've seen is, and I'll talk about it in the slide as well, but just to touch upon the traditional software projects were development heavy, and the testing was kind of a short part of it. Test what you've developed, say the system integration testing, individual testing, regression, all those things. Now, what we're seeing is that there's a ratio of 1:3. So 1 day of build effort or a development effort results into 3 days of testing effort for anything agentic. Why is that so? The reason is that you need to make sure that you're getting the right response. You need to make sure that all the compliances are being checked. We are still, as Sally said, humans are still at the helm of this entire technology. So we do not want those agents to exploit the business in any ways, right? So that's where testing has become really, really important. But a great question, I will touch upon it.
And you're automating the testing with a human in the loop?
Partly. So there are ways and means to automate the testing up to a certain extent, which is where you can probably just check upon if the questions are being fired and you're getting a response, but there'll be human in the loop to make sure that the responses which are coming out of that automation are valid, or the right sense, tone of voice, regional flavor to it, and all those kind of things. So, and that's where it's taking quite longer time to test any agentic capability. Yes, please.
Somebody mentioned, I've got 2 parts, but somebody mentioned IBM Watson. I've just been in a meeting and somebody mentioned that IBM Watson are now offering a liability insurance for their AI-driven Watson. So just an interesting point if you're thinking of buying that particular model. But I'm interested in the, I've missed a lot, so where you've got people there, what you don't seem to have is recruitment and background checking of the people you're hiring to do the work. And therefore you don't have an equivalent on this side. And you also mentioned testing. I've done a lot of testing, and you test against the expected outcome. It seems a bit counterintuitive to have expected outcomes for an AI when you don't know what it's going to report. So how do you know it's right? You said you have a human in the loop, but that human in the loop's only for the testing. So as soon as it's given free rein, then how do you know that the answers it's giving are the right answers under different circumstances?
I completely agree, and that's where these 3 things: topic, encapsulation, and mapping, policy and guardrail, process flows. All of this is a part of how we configure an agent. So we are not allowing that agent to operate on their own for everything that a human does. But what we're doing is, say for example, if you hire an intern, you define the job responsibilities, right? There's a job description for a human. You say that you're supposed to do this, but you're not supposed to do that. Those things are basically probably for a different salary cadre. That's exactly what's happening with agents as well. So you as a human have an authority and ability to define what topics are basically what they are supposed to do. For example, responding to general FAQ questions, issuing refunds and returns, just telling where is the order of the customer, those kind of things. You as a human have authority to do that and then put the right guardrails where agent can not go anywhere.
So it can identify, say, a novel situation, and then if it's outside of the experience of the agent, it'll escalate it to a human.
A human, absolutely. Yeah, you define the guardrails, and if the agent sees that this is not under my purview, just like a human agent, when they transfer it to a supervisor, your AI agent will transfer it to a human being their supervisor. So that was interesting.
How is the agent storing that configuration? Does it have to refresh? Because I find that they forget things that you've told them.
Yeah. The configuration as in,
When you configure,
okay,
You mean writing the
The
rules,
actions.
and the actions and the guardrails?
yes, everything about that agent that makes it unique in what it's delivering.
that's fundamentally basis how an agent is configured. So it's what is an agent, right? It's still a piece of technology. So how a human configures it, that's where kind of they kind of store it. So for example, I'll give you a high level example. When we talk about role, the 5 attributes of an agent, right? The role that they want to do. We define something called topics and instructions. So let's see it this way. Again, I'll take the customer service example because everybody could relate to it. Topics could be, for a customer service scenario, responding to general FAQs. That's a broader topic. That a human contact center agent also does today. That is part of job that they do. That's a job that needs to be done by a human agent or by an AI agent. Within that particular topic, you instruct that agent to do something. So that instruction, as a hard-coded instruction, goes into, in a natural language, goes into the application saying, all right, if someone reaches out to you and asks for the XYZ question, you refer to the policy document that we have for the company, which is available on the website or within your platform application, and then respond back to the customer. Now that instruction sits with that agent. And now this agent is supposed to only respond back based on the instruction given to them. If you're in doubt, that's a guardrail. If you're in doubt, if you don't know the answer, if there's an off-topic question, and if there's a question beyond general FAQ, which is not available in policy, pass it on to a human agent. That's a guardrail, which is where you an instruction to anyone, pass it on to someone who understands it.
I think my question
And
is
all that setup he just described is the configuration of the agent that's stored in the platform. So you can then come back to it if you want to check why was this not working, or if you make an improvement, I want to roll back. It's a very,
so if the policy changes, it'll still look every time to validate.
Not necessarily. So
Trigger.
there are elements to this that, and this is what I'm finding with customers, is agents don't do everything. Just because you're using an agent, you mustn't forget your testing, your backup, your rollback, all the stuff you would do in IT. You mustn't forget those. So the same disciplines apply. And if you have an agent, you want to version control it, you want to configure it. And if somebody legal wants to check which agent caused that calamity, you've got to be able to produce it. If you're doing GDPR considerations or EU AI Act, all those legalistic things, you've got to keep it as a business. You've got to keep records of those things. And Salesforce platform uses something called metadata, which is basically information about information. And that's stored again in the platform. And so because we serve lots of different countries and companies in different industries, some are more stringent, financial services, healthcare, defense, and others. All those are part of the platform. So to your question, you store it within the platform and be able to pull it out.
And the monitoring is great because it's not a case of configuring it and like just letting it go and thinking it's just running. You can go back and look at every response it's given. So that way you can go back and fine tune things and you've got that audit there.
But isn't it an issue with these generative AI that you have now put all the data into this one repository that you use to train, and now you're trying to put the guardrail so that it doesn't spit out what you don't want it to spit out? Whereas prior to technologies, and I'm not saying that was good or bad, it would only infer from the data that's provided. It was not looking at the training data that we're using is just to make it more poetic, yeah? Because we can see very nice responses, but at the end of the day, it has a data set which we haven't approved, yeah, as a business, for example. And then it's using that because they're training to formulate your answers. And of course, you're putting your guardrails and those configurations to try to control it. But we know we are failing guardrails continuously, yeah? And we're continuously trying to improve. It's not like a configuration in a standard program where you can say, don't do that. Because it's like a child. You've taught something to a child and you want it to unlearn. You cannot, because it has data. So that's the biggest issue from a business perspective, how we can build that understanding of how it's coming with those answers, because clearly there's issues. You cannot go to a regulator and say, it was ChatGPT that told me that. So although we may get insurance from IBM, but I'm sure they'll get big bills if it starts happening quite a bit.
I had a comment there, you know, with guardrails, when we go through that exercise of eliciting concerns across people, that's not a one and done work stream. It's a continuous loop of addressing those guardrails. The benefits of doing this outside of those training models is you're using all that that slide load with all the applications. It's bringing in all your business information, all your CRM information on your customers, and bringing that with the generative nature of LLMs is really powerful. So it's thinking of it as the USPs of business data and CRM context and all your customer information.
Could I also add up to that? I think that it's also about accessibility, because yes, IBM can have their own training bot and LLM, but a lot of companies, if they're small or medium, they cannot afford to train from the very beginning one. And as an agent, you kind of have data behind to configure it, and then you just add up your 3 documents or 10 policies to follow as well.
Yeah, and it's exactly like a child. So for example, you know, a child basically gradually rises in the school curriculum as well. Exception, year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4. That's what an AI agent also is. So once you kind of, and once you kind of give certain topics to them, and you understand, or to agents, and then you understand they're really working well in that capacity, should I offload some more tasks to them? And there's a slide that I'll cover very soon on that as well, is how human plus agents basically should augment each other in certain capacities.
Just conscious of time, it's fascinating conversation. So much. You know, I asked for it. What we'll do is we'll do 5 more minutes in this section.
Okay.
Okay. 100%. So we can hand over to Sally and she can get us into the real messy stuff of guardrails and principles and things like that. So,
I think thanks, Jude. And I think we touched upon this in brief, right? So not all the agents are equal. Not all employees are equal in the ecosystem, right? There's an HR, there's a finance guy. The skill set differs. That's how your agents are. If you are implementing an HR agent, they would need to know the policies, the HR function primarily. If you're implementing a finance agent, then it would have different roles. That's why all agents are kind of different and should be well thought. Obviously, the project approach is different, the design is different for them. Human should be in the loop. And I would say, this is what Sally said, human should be at the helm to decide what they should do, what they shouldn't do. Everything approach is different. You know, as we said, it's not one and done. It's cyclic, it's like a child. Once you pass year 1, you have to go to year 2. And that's how you need to test it at every stage. Yeah, responsible ethical AI, and I'll leave it with Sally about it. There's a new role which is popping up. There are different roles with this agentic system, and Jude started with new jargons which are coming up, right? Prompt engineering is in a new stream itself. Agent owner is another role which is formed. What is an agent owner? Technically a product owner, but it's responsible to manage that agent. They'll have to play a role of an HR to manage that agent. They'll also have to play a role of product manager to make sure that they put innovation into that agent. They also have to play a role of a tester, an architect, an experience design, and a change consultant as well. So that's quite a heavy role which is popping up in the industry these days. Skim through very quickly, talking about this was a traditional project that I was mentioning, right? So you plan, design something, you build, you test, you deploy, you consume, you monitor and scale. It is cyclic now. It's a pretzel loop. And this loop is never ending when it comes to an autonomous capability and generative AI that we do. You can design something, you build a test, you experiment with it, deploy, and you start consuming. This is where you start using their agent in the live environment. I think there was a point made earlier. You use the agent in the live environment and you realize there might be some tweaks that I need to do. Not from the guardrails perspective, probably you have tested the guardrails really well. But even if you see some hiccups in the guardrails, you can always go back and reconfigure your agents with just natural language. It's not heavy lifting. It's not a coding that you need to do for agents, technically. They're all just natural language which you can use. Then you act again on that scale. then you monitor, and then you scale the agents. And the scaling of agents is quite interesting. It can go as deep as possible or as broad as possible. What do I mean by that? If you have one single agent, you can put more topics, more instructions, more backend integrations to act, more guardrails, launch it on more channels. For example, your contact center agent. Or you can add more agents, HR agent, recruitment agent, finance agent, sales agent, or agent X, right? Any kind of agents. It could be broader, it could be deeper.
So you can do all that in one agent, is that what you're saying?
Come again, sorry?
You can do all that in one agent. You can have one agent with an HR agent, a finance agent, a this agent.
You can if you want to make it really complex. So for example, if you have,
Otherwise, you would have separate.
you would have
ideally.
separate agents.
All right, okay.
Ideally,
When you say depth and breadth, that is what I.
yeah, so ideally you just think it from a human perspective. If you hire a contact center representative, you wouldn't give them a job of an HR or a finance. You would either give them more responsibility within contact center. Now you're allowed to answer FAQs, but now you can also handle this product and that product and that product. And that responsibility of refund exchange, etc. And then for HR, you might need to have another employee. It's just a replica of how humans work.
I've done a lot of work in call center design. And one of the first questions we used to ask a client was, we used to say there are two types of call center staff. There are process driven.
Yes.
And there are knowledge workers. You pay less to the process worker, you pay more to the knowledge worker who has empowered to make decisions. Are you now saying that that paradigm is coming together in a sense?
It is merging, if you see it that way. What exactly your knowledge worker was doing is basically finding that experience and they can handle customer queries, basis the enormous amount of expertise that they carry, right? Process workers were basically driven by process. I think there was a previous slide where it says, if this, then do this. If this, then do this. Right? It's like little mechanical, and they've got a scripted way of doing things.
Exactly.
Now, because agents have got scripted way of doing things, plus they have an autonomous capability and a little brain of themselves, and you can enrich them with more topics instructions. You can give them more knowledge to act on. So the knowledge workers carried that knowledge. Now you can give that knowledge to an autonomous agent too.
Because the scripted process workers were effectively a firewall to keep the public or the customers away from the knowledge workers. Now, if you can bring those two things together, then you get better outcomes. So it's not just efficiency, it's effectiveness.
100%. Better customer experience, right? And companies have spent a lot of time in innovating customer service, but the experience is what the customer carries away. So just very quickly touching upon our recommendation of this ecosystem, right? And to all the points that we've considered, we know that agentic ecosystem is a little risky. It's very new for us, but it is inevitable. So there's a fear of missing out for the companies, FOMO, but there is also a FOMO, which is fear of messing up. Companies do not want to mess up with anything agentic. That's where we recommend that they start with a pilot with a handful of their subset of users, maybe internal, external. Then they go on to a minimum viable product, minimum viable engagement. Just for example, just give one of the topics like general FAQ, right? Responding back to the FAQ or policy document. And then scale. Then think what other capabilities you want to provide to that agent. As we talked about, going deeper or going broader. Think and then scale it up. This was a very interesting slide. It had animations basically. So what we're saying is there's a human, there's the human's intern, which is an agent. Now this slate was full of blue lines, if you can imagine, and this was empty. What we're saying is this human agent currently does 10 different things. A contact center agent, again, coming back to the same example, does 10 different things today. There's an opportunity for this human agent to offload 3 of them to an AI agent. Picking up the phone or just picking up the chat, talking to the customer, giving them the policy information, that's it. Which frees up a lot of humans' time. The human can have more innovative tasks, which you can see in green maybe. And then you can offload more tasks as you realize that our agent is reliable enough to kind of give more authority. You can offload more tasks to that agent. You can offload partial task or bigger task to an AI agent. Again, AI agent is just your intern. If you probably would have hired a human to do some of the work that you do today, you would have done the same thing, right? Given partial tasks to them, maybe just managing minutes of meeting, right? Just capturing notes, etc. That all could be done by an AI agent of yours. Jude, you want to talk about this quickly, the new ways of working?
Yeah, sure. I'll be really brief because we're trying to. So some of the things emerging is that responsibility for AI agents, or really anything that this technology does, is not the technology that's responsible. It's not a person. You can't sue it if it goes wrong, and you can't reward it if it does something exceedingly brilliant. So what we're advising customers is to consider having a new role of an agent owner. And the point of that is they take responsibility for the agent. So when you tell a human being, now you're responsible for this new agent, they wake up, they take it more seriously, because if it does something wrong, it implicates them. And so we're saying, when you work in developing agents, you want this person, it could be a person, it could be multiple people, responsible for what the agent is going to do. Treat it like an intern. Bring it in, you train it, you let it do some tasks, you give it feedback, and you get better, and it gets better over time. And that's the role that agent owner will play for this setup. It's emerging. Who knows if that's what's going to be in future? But for now, we're finding that it's harder to tell a project team, oh, you have an agent, make sure it works well. No, but if somebody in that project team is named owner of the agent, believe me, that person.
It's going to be a very short-lived role, because within about 2 years, bots will be writing bots, and bots will be managing bots.
Could well happen.
It's going to happen. It's not good. It will. It's going to happen.
We're learning, and this is part of those learning. The other thing, real quickly, is that there are two sides to this thing. One is to do with data. And the data scientists are telling us you need to get data maturity, and the other is to do with AI, and that we think it's both. So that's where your data is the foundation for this whole thing. You got to get your data house in order, and your AI gets better as you go along. Your AI is great. You use it to sort out the data, fine. But really, you got to do both. That's really what this slide is saying. And in the interest of time, we're going to go into responsible AI, backslide. Yeah, we're going to go into responsible AI now. And if we click to the section, Sally can take us through that conversation. Okay. We can come back to the other ones.
I don't want to touch this in case. There we go.
Yeah,
yeah, cool. Thank you so much. Great. Okay, so one term we hear a lot with AI is the word trust, rightly so. And of course, with any technology, especially with the nature of AI, we need to really think about responsible AI as we do that. And the first thing we do is ask, when we're working with project teams, organizations, who is responsible for AI implementation? And we start with that very basic question. It's really important to think about just things general across business or in life. What's something that you really struggled to trust, or what's something really innovative that has actually broken your trust? Are you skeptical to get into a self-driving car, for example, or what you got in it and it actually fostered your trust, or did it break your trust? And it's really important to bring those cross-functional teams together to think about what trust actually means, especially in the world of AI adoption as well. And responsible AI, it's quite an emerging term, but it's a really important one. And actually, we're already seeing how this could start with their department and actually be everyone's responsibility, especially with where we're going with AI. But the way to think about responsible AI is actually a practice of the way you design and you build and you deploy AI. That's really safe, fair. It has transparency in the way that you use it for your internal employees, but also society. This is an interface. It's almost a brand ambassador of the organization. So there is a responsibility there to make sure we impact society positively as well, because there are natural risks with this type of technology as well. So really, I'd like to think of it as, and we think of it as, responsible AI. It's everyone's responsibility. It's everyone's responsibility, not just the project teams that's working on it, to make sure that we're building an AI of the future that we feel safe and confident with. As we've done its testing, we're making sure that it's a good representation of our organization as well. One of the ways that we start to do this, and there are multiple work streams attached to this, but one of the ways we do this is by setting up principles. The same way you set up an organization, your organization has a vision statement where you walk through reception and it's got a list of missions and it's got values. And there's a sweet balance here. You know, we want to work on exciting and innovative things that are going to be the next frontier of experience. But like you're in a lab, there is a fire extinguisher, there are safety goggles, there are safety procedures put in place. And that's how we need to think about this technology as well, as what are the things that we need to put in place that we can innovate and do some really great things and be really excited about technology as like technology enthusiasts. But what are we doing to make sure that we safeguard this and we build something up together in the area as well? And just be transparent when we've used AI to generate images as well. Disclosure is something that's really close to my heart. I was really pleased when I saw Instagram launch the disclosure of AI info on post. I was like, okay, if Instagram are calling out when they're using AI, then we are working towards a transparent future. The reality is, you know, trust and innovation is greatly received, but trust is also really difficult to manage and actually be perceived as well. And the reality is, this is a great research report. I really recommend you guys check it out. It's a big read. The Endelman Trust Barometer really looks at when innovation is being perceived as, is it being well managed or is it not? This is not Salesforce research. This is just general.
That mismanagement, though, is deliberate. It's not carelessness. There are state actors not constraining themselves with responsible, ethical programming. They're not, and these lectures always seem to not recognise that fact.
Is that like that moving fast and breaking things?
And you know, there are a lot of people who also look at reflecting and embracing this innovation. So we need to really rethink about that as we go forward. Yeah, was there a question? This is one of the things that we do. One of the foundational things we do with organizations is to get people together and establish guidelines for responsible AI as well. These are actually Salesforce's guidelines where if people don't have them, we're happy to share them and people use them as a baseline. But it's really important to make sure that an organization, you have a common language how you want to set these principles as well, because they effectively inform how you actually implement and use these things. So we call it ASHES. It's kind of accuracy, safety, honesty, empowering, sustainable. And then it's being really clear about what we mean about behind each one of these principles. So for example, feel free to take a picture of the slide that's on our website. I won't drain this too much, but with accuracy, having a principle around conveying when something is uncertain is really important, not pretending like you have the answer to something. That's really important as well. When we think about sustainability, we make sure that we're using the right size models as well, because we know that AI can be a real drain on things. And there's a lot of funny memes going around of every time you do say please and thank you, sorry, AI, it's going to just it's like draining your phone for a day. So these are some of the principles that we apply when we develop our own tools as well, but we share them out. And then you go a step deeper once you do establish your principles, having real practical requirements. So you have this kind of one pager that actually influences the way that you design. When we talk about accuracy and we talk about making sure things are uncertain, it's making sure that you show a confidence score. So going back to those questions around the transparency and the reasoning, making sure that those tools actually show how something was generated as well, and making sure that if something has a low confidence score, you don't show that result as well. So doing this work up front really helps, doing this work up front really helps bring yourselves together, so you're almost safeguarding and putting these principles in place.
How are you defining nefarious use in safety?
How are we?
How do you define nefarious use? Are you talking about criminal activity? Are you talking about state actors? How are you defining nefarious?
It varies. So it varies with the toxicity, detection, so biases. Yeah, there's a whole list of things that we would go through.
You would define it for your business. So if you were using this platform, you would get to define what nefarious means for you. We can give you a list of here's what we think it means. We can go to NIST and say, here's what they think. But remember that responsibility thing is yours. You've got to be the one to say, here's how I want it to work. Then you build your agents accordingly. That would be.
No, but in the real world, if somebody hacks my agent and gets into it and then goes off and does skullduggery all over the place, I'm going to be legally responsible for it because it was my agent, and the authorities will say, oh, well, you know, you were legally responsible. So now I have to prove, I have to forensicate the whole thing or get somebody in to forensicate. Do a digital forensics analysis on what happened. So nefarious does have, it has, you know, the honesty, accuracy, empowering, sustainability are all good, but nefarious activity, which is rampant at the moment, has consequences.
Let's put it this way. Agentic AI is not going to solve human nature. There will always be bad actors.
Oh, I understand that, but I just wanted your definition of when you have nefarious up to define the word.
For my own personal definition of nefarious?
What Salesforce defines it as.
All right, okay.
It's a bigger conversation.
It is a bit, I'll get our lawyers next time. We can have that conversation.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about the link between trust and value. So if I'm asking, can I trust the system to deliver the value that was promised? So I was reading an article on LinkedIn by Bernard Marr about the AI graveyard and how a lot of companies fall into that graveyard, where they feel pressured to jump on the AI bandwagon just to show that, oh, we are current. But then years later, they spend millions of pounds and cannot see the real value. So my question is, when it comes to trust, how much of user experience testing is done beyond those first 6 months of saying it looks cool? But does it truly deliver value in 2 years' time, 3 years' time?
That's a really great point. I'm glad you brought it up because there's so much research on this of it's the AI race, everyone wanted to do new shiny things, people are experimenting, but the reality of having a pilot versus a fully baked long-term strategy with a roadmap, there's a disconnect. And one of those reasons is the governance. It's not defining the right principles of the practice. It's also not having the right value success metrics because you can't really prove the value of the business. There are multiple factors of how you move from delivering a really shiny pilot to having a fully baked strategy that has longevity, that has success. So there's fantastic research on that gap of why that happens as well.
Just one more point. Very interesting thing that it's an evolution, right? It's not technology which is delivered and then it's one and done. It's changing every single day, put it that way. And your point of how exactly we can when it comes to the journey, how much of innovation could be done and value that's given to the end customer who's implementing it. One contact center agent that we were talking about, again, an example. You could have a low cost agent or lower cost agent today, human agent today, sitting in Philippines, India, and a low cost country or facility. Can do this job better than an AI agent does. But does that stop you from innovating? I would say no. This is just the start of agentic ecosystem, right? It will get mature. The cost will go down. The internet, when it came, it was quite expensive. Now it's part of our life and it's very easy to use, very convenient, very cheap to use. That's exactly what is going to happen with agentic ecosystem as well. It's a downward race. Now you need to then think from the value perspective. As I said, FOMO and FOMO, so fear of missing out, yes. Am I being the one who's left behind in the race, or am I doing the things right? I think those things need to be balanced.
Yeah. I'll just close that on this and then I think we've got time for Q&A, don't we?
Yeah, sure.
We talked about value as well. I think this is beyond that conversion, and the word productivity is thrown around so much with AI. I think it's double clicking and quantifying that. But measuring things like the model performance is really important, so that whether that's speed and things like that. User adoption and engagement has always been important, but I think specifically now as well, it's moving away from having this shiny POC to how is this being used inside the organization? How are we evangelizing it to get people comfortable with using it as well? So user adoption and engagement, absolutely key, in addition to your real kind of bread and butter KPIs around operations and business impact as well. Of course, there's really rich reporting that's within the agent platform as well. That as well. Okay. I'll conclude here, and you can move to.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Okay. So we've got 15 minutes to 8 o'clock, right, Gautam? I don't think I'll take that long, but I want to put enough time for Q&A so we can have a conversation and then try and get to some of the more thorny questions. So what I want to share is I want to tell a story of how we've done it. And the elements you've heard from Gautam, the elements you've heard from Sally, how they were put into practical, application to deliver agents for customers. So it's a story more than anything else. There are a few slides to help guide it along. The first part of it is what agents bring into this place is the root of the tree. So if everybody sees the technology projects and this stuff, you start getting into the values, the cultures, the people elements, assumptions, behavior, etc. That starts to show up. And the path to production, some key considerations we have to navigate to get from an idea or concept or use case all the way to putting it live and making it work for you. Baselines are important. What are the risks and impacts of those risks? What are the systems environment? The integration is critical because your data doesn't live in one place. It's everywhere and at different levels of maturity. You've got to think about those. For me, data is right at the heart of everything. It's right at the root of this whole thing. If your data is messed up, well, you'll get very good from this thing. Accountability and responsibility to go hand in hand. It's your business. It's your objective. It's your want to try and get innovative in what you do. And then, of course, evidence, governance, regulatory compliance, etc., right there at the bottom. So these are the things that help guide the implementation of responsible AI in your organizations. What I like to do is to tell a story around this model, okay? And this model came not from the theory. This is from sweat and some tears were involved in this. At the top is this thing of guardrails. It's a continuous journey. And we say that because when we do agents, we have the 5 attributes that make up an agent. One of them is guardrails. And people go linearly and think, well, first we design it, we get the role, we do all that stuff, then we do the guardrails. No, you got to do the guardrails and the thoughts and the thinking around the risks right before you even do the project. You got to think, is this use case in line with our legal obligations? I have a customer right now who I'm working with, and the first thing they said, which really impressed me, was their legal counsel, the head of their legal counsel, wants to be in the room when we're having these conversations about the agent. I thought, yes, you guys get it. Because when your lead counsel wants to see how the agents are baked and cooked, how the sausage is made, it shows you they know what this means for their business. By the way, these guys are recruitment, they provide recruitment services. So you can imagine people's data are there, age discrimination, sex discrimination, orientation, ethnicity, etc. So they are very sensitive to the toxicity that can be found in some of these LLMs that power agents. So that to me is a good start. Think of guardrails right from the start and all the way through and then beyond, because it's going to be there. These agents change. Your business values don't necessarily change that fast. So gotta keep it in there. So the life cycle then starts with our kickoff. What do you want the agent to do? You have a goal. You have a reason for getting an agent into your organization. Some people don't have a rule. They just want to be in the bandwagon that they have an agent. Oh, great. And they'll figure it out as they go. But nothing wrong with that. When you get beyond the shiny new toy, get into what's the value of it. That's where you start to determine where is it that this agent is going to play in their business. And so one of the ways we use to elicit not just the goal of the agent or the activity of the agent, but also the guardrails and risks that the agent gets into is something we call jobs to be done. So we run a workshop where we take the business through the identified use cases, potential use cases. You know, if you've figured out where you want the agent to play, that makes life easier. The role of jobs to be done is to say, what are the jobs the agent will do? And you go through them step by step. First, it will do this, then it will do that, then it will ask this, and then it will do that. That's what the agent will do. You go into each of those steps of the task, and then you say, what are the dependencies? What does it need to get the task done? Which systems need to be brought in, which processes, which people. And then beyond that, you go at the risks for this step of the process. What if it went wrong? What if it shared all the information to everybody? What if, what if, what if? And those we call them concerns. Because not every concern is a risk. And even if there were risks, some businesses might have appetite for that particular risk or not. So every business is different. So if somebody says, I've got an agent for you, say no. What does it do for me? That's really where we start from. And so working with customers to define the jobs to be done is a critical part of the journey to the agent. When we've got that understanding, then we bring in the builders. So you have the architects, you have the developers, those guys you were asking about earlier. That's where they show up. They've got these requirements, they've got these jobs to be done, they've got what it needs to configure the agent. And then they do the analysis, or they do it in parallel. The other thing is that this isn't linear, it's not step 1, 2, 3, 4. We could do this in parallel. I've done this here, after they've started building the agent. And I've done it way before the kickoff because we wanted to understand which jobs, which particular activity is relevant for their business. So this is highly fluid. It's just a framework. It's just a way to do it. At this point is where you validate those jobs to be done, the activities and the jobs to be done. You figure out how you're going to design the agent. Because agents are conversational, we're now having input of conversation design, interaction design. How is the agent going to show up? Is it going to introduce itself as, my name is Hal, I'm an agent, I work for X company? Or are you going to not say anything and see if the person figures out it's an agent? It's your call, that's your responsibility as a business. And then if your lead counsel is in the room, they'll be asking, what if somebody sues us because we're using an agent instead of a human being? Is there an impersonation thing there? So these are the kind of, it's not a technology exercise. Let me just tell you that. It's not, it's a business and regulation and technology. Everybody gets into this thing. So by the time you have your architects and designers working on creating agents, they're doing an iterative loop. It's a journey. So they'll design something and they'll sort of figure out if it meets the parameters of the agents. If it's got guardrails, what are the guardrails guarding against? Do you accept those concerns are actual risks that you need to mitigate? And is the mitigation going to be done by the agent? Or is it going to be done by your business process? Is it going to be done by people? It's not only technology for guardrails, it's the entire thing. So again, what is your risk appetite? all those concerns or things you can tolerate, your decision. That's why we want you to have an agent owner, because you make that decision and say, that's what I'm going to do here. And that's why I'm going to do it this way. These guardrails that come up for this assessment from this solution design and development are used to drive different things. They include things like your experience design. How is the agent going to interact and represent your business? It's like a human being, it's an agent. It's it responds to your customers. How is it going to show up? You design that. What about training and testing? How about all the process updates, training, change for the people? So as much as you're doing agents, you also have to think about your people. Their jobs are impacted because now there are agents working alongside them. What do they have to do that's different? You had a question at the start, and I'm going to, bring it out here. The question was, you work for, sorry.
Picture a large retail organization with 500,000 employees. And picture the HR department, who are not technical people, they don't understand this, not interested in this, but they have a strong sense that the sort of people they recruit today, the skills they recruit, and I'm not talking about the technical skills behind this, just the people working in their business. They're recruiting thousands of them every year, putting through a 3, 4, 5-year training program. Now they have a sense that because of what you guys are doing, that you're going to upset their lives. So they're going to have to do something different. And they want to know what is that difference. And they don't want to know they've got to re-engineer the whole business. And when you've been through re-engineering the business, and then you tell them, we don't need that scale anymore because we've got an agent that does that, and so on and so on. It's more strategic than that.
100%.
Yeah, because you might have gone through this and find that most of the people I've recruited in the last 5 years, we don't need anymore.
Absolutely, yeah.
And these are real concerns.
Yeah.
So if somebody is here from HR perspective, I mean, it's a real concern. What are the skills? What do we want in this world where agents are running around the place?
What I think is missed, the 5 factors you've talked about, what I feel I spotted there that's missing, and it's sort of implied in some things you said, but none of you have said it really explicitly, and that is that what's going to distinguish an early generation agentic AI from another bot, is the authority it's going to be given to do things. And that is what's going to make the big difference, because as soon as you give it the authority to do certain things, that's going to say, I'm going to allow you to take this risk, and I'm going to allow you to take that risk. I'm going to allow you to ignore that policy. I'm going to allow you to forget about GDPR for the day and do something else. That's what I think so it's the authority you give the bot that is what's going to really define what it can do.
Yes. So the scope of that bot or the agent, you need to be having that conversation. Seriously, if it were me, I'll be having it right here, right? How autonomous is this agent? What can it do? What can't it do? And how will it interact with the people in the organization? Remember, there's this agent owner role. If you have it, that person's job is on the line if the agent messes up. So that point you're making, I'll be thinking about it as part of this, right? At the early end of it, at the early start. But let me go to this people story. You know, I said here, what are the training and change and adoption factors that you have to take into consideration to get the agent to succeed? Because much as the agent is put out there, you need to have people in your organization that can work with the agent to get an activity done, to get a process delivered, right? Get an outcome. How are you going to train them? How are you going to make sure that they're there adopting this? Because if you let the agent run on its own, it's like an intern, it will go crazy. So it's not just about technology. It's training the people into the new roles that have to be working alongside agents. That's where you get your job.
That's later in the process.
Correct.
Because you've re-engineered my business. I don't know what I'm involved in. I'm going to have to do that. And once I know what these agents are and what they're going to do, and we don't need people to do anymore, I can develop a recruitment and development plan for that.
Well, this.
So I want to know today.
Yes.
Yeah, so I
You want to know today
I
what
want
the
to know
future is
where's it
gonna look like.
going, what's it gonna look like? That's a real world question.
It is a
isn't it?
real
It's
world
got big
concern.
numbers on it.
Yes.
Yeah.
I won't give you an answer because I don't know what tomorrow is gonna look like for you.
Okay.
However, you may if you wish. However, what I can tell you is that in designing what this thing is going to do, you start to design what these people are going to do. It's not after the fact, like you said. I'd be saying, design it once you've got this sorted out. Figure out how the agent will play with people. Sally mentioned human at the helm. Who is that human? What helm do they have? How much control do you have over the agent? You've got your lead counsel, hopefully in the room, who is going to be looking after regulatory compliance. You've got your head of security. These are human jobs. I mean, you could get agents eventually to do them. I don't know. But the reality is that at this point where we are right now, as you're going into the first phase of agents, you've got to figure out what the humans will do alongside the agents. That's who you recruit. And actually, it's not recruit. It's the people already working there.
I use the word development as well.
Good.
I said recruitment and development.
You're developing your digital labor.
Oh, okay, let's not go there. Right. So, sorry, a couple of questions. Yeah.
The agent owner role you mentioned, how technical should they be? What should be their level of competence as a recommendation?
I'll give you an example. So one of the first customers we rolled out Agentforce with very early. We've got 5 minutes. Okay, I'll speak fast. So one of the customers we rolled out very early stage. They wanted, they basically wanted a very FAQs only. It answers questions by looking at documents. Right? And they sell devices. They already had a good, what do you call them, consumer base, customer base. And they said this agent will show up on their website and interact with the customers or new customers wanting to find out stuff. Very safe. The hidden in one corner of their website, somewhere that not everybody will trip on it because they weren't sure what they were going to get. But what they said as a metric was, this agent mustn't go below our net promoter score, the customer experience that they currently have with their current way of doing things. And so the design of the agent was very tight and stringent. When we tested it, it passed with flying colors, right? Then it went live. And people hated it because it was like a bot. It didn't answer the question. And when it didn't know, it didn't say, I don't know, it just kept silent. That wasn't a good use of
That must have been a really bad testing phase you had there.
I think it was not Gen AI.
Back to engineering. And what I've understood, a lot of the hallucinations that large language models come up with is because of bad prompting, and these large language models do not have the capability to infer what the question says. You know, it's the old computer. My computer never does what I want it to, only what I tell it to. So it cannot infer the meaning of a question because it doesn't understand meaning. It has no semantic capability. So unless your internal users and potentially your external customer users on a website know how to prompt and ask the question correctly, don't use ambiguities in the question, and getting a customer to do that.
Well, this is the reason why you use agents, because they're conversational. And the idea is they should be able to have a broader understanding than your...
They can't infer. The average Joe in the street is going to ask a question.
In a certain
dealing with a human agent, the human agent can say, oh, what you really mean is this. A large language model can't do that because it doesn't.
Unless you tell it to.
It cannot infer.
Unless you tell it to. Tell it to
Well,
interpret.
inference is and I've seen examples of this. It's not able to do it.
So when you design your agent and you tell it...
Because it doesn't understand the meaning of the words it's using. It
Can I,
doesn't have semantic
this
capability.
doesn't sort of fit with me
It
because
doesn't, because if you're going into how it's built and the models that used, human meaning is not within reach yet.
Yes,
I totally agree
Uh,
with you.
excuse me.
Absolutely.
I mean, this sort of clashes a little bit with my understanding because AI delivers an output and it rates a lot of outputs on a percentage basis, and that will get better or every time. It's learning, and it will learn ambiguity in speech. It will be able to. I wouldn't use the word infer, but it will be able to interpret what the real question is. And it will, and that's the answer that will rise to the top of the pile.
Exactly.
So I don't agree with that.
It takes time to build that muscle. It's a really good point. There's well, you know what? We're gonna go eat in a minute. So I just want to finish that story I was saying, which was these guys tested it, found that the reaction wasn't really what they wanted for the customer experience. Guess what they did? They turned up the temperature. So instead of now saying, I don't know, or keeping silent, it'll actually interact with the user. And say, oh, this thing you asked is not within my range. Actually, here's what I can help you with. And they like that. That's what got rolled out beyond the MVP and pilot. So the point of it is, yes, you design these things to be able to use the I won't call it fine tuning, but to use the configuration element to get it right for the voice of the business that you want the agent to give you.
Just
It doesn't need to
10
be
seconds.
technical enough.
Okay, it doesn't make sense.
The agent owner role basically doesn't need to be quite deep, hard-coded developer kind of role. They need to have business acumen
Process,
basically
yeah.
to understand what are the processes that are being uploaded to an agent.
Thank you. I forgot what the question was. On the contrary, actually, the person that ended up becoming agent owner was a very technical guy. And he not only was technical, he understood the business process and why they've done things a certain way. So he could answer some of the questions that the project team couldn't. So if you don't have that person that's very vocal in meetings who gets what the business is trying to do, look among the team there, 2 or 3 of them together should be able to give you that voice. It's not a role that is CIO or developer one. It's really about the people that are involved in the process.
They
One last
definitely
question.
carry the weight to help adoption beyond the initial one as well.
Last question.
You know, you've
Sorry.
I'm still here.
Please, darling.
Fine, sorry to interrupt, sorry to cut it short, but of course, we're not doing, because why I've stopped it now is because there's some food going cold, waiting for you. And I'm sure you can keep talking after eating. So please do that, but before you do that, please say thank you very much. It's become painfully obvious that this is an evolving subject. And we haven't even mentioned ethics or governance yet. I think we'll have to major on those later, but that's going to be up to you because we are IT people and we're going to be measured on our performance in terms of how we handle all this. We won't be able to just say, oh, well, I built the chess game, but I didn't know it was going to beat everything else. Yeah, we've got to know where we're going. And this is becoming painfully obvious with the rise of agentic AI. But keep that in mind. And well, as I say, it's up to you. It's great to just throw things at people, isn't it? But there's something I want to tell you in terms of what we've got coming up, in terms of our AI and thinking and so on. There's an event we've got coming up on May the 19th, which is quite interesting. It's about disinformation. Can disinformation be stopped? Now, you know, I won't spin it out now, but what is disinformation? Where can we see it? You know, how do we know it's happening? What's the trump card? Oh, no, sorry. All of those things, these are things we need to debate. But the bottom line of that particular event is that there's something being set up across Europe, which is to fight disinformation, possibly I speculate, with the first application of it to fight disinformation about Ukraine. Let me just suggest that, and there'll be an opportunity for all of us to participate in that. It's a really serious, real-life application of IT and cyber skills to fight against some of the injustices that are happening now. Okay, that's on May the 19th. Meanwhile, back forward, fast backwards to tonight. 8:10, food and drink, yours, come and enjoy, keep on talking. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.